Good afternoon, everyone. And on behalf of Strategic Retirement Partners, I want to welcome you to today's live event, Fierce Finances. My name is Sarah Krapek, and I'm the Director of Participant Education for Strategic Retirement Partners. I'll be the moderator for today, but before we get started, I have just a few items to go over with all of you. All the lines will be muted during today's call, but we do welcome your questions, so please feel free to send those to us electronically. We'll monitor them during the session today and make plenty of time for Q&A after our presenters go through their remarks. As well, the session will be recorded and sent out to all registrants later this week. I'm delighted to share that we have a great resource for you. The QR code that you see on the screen, as well as the link below, will take you to a PDF on our website that's full of fierce finance resources. There are newsletters, blogs, books that we would recommend, influencers on social media. We encourage you to check out these resources if you want help upping your fierce finance game after you spend a little time with us today. As your retirement plan advisor here at SRP, we clearly love investments, and we hope that you'll consider your time with us this afternoon to be an investment in yourself. From time to time, it's important to take a step back from that daily grind and evaluate where you're at, where you're going, and acknowledge perhaps how far you've come in your financial life, particularly in this wildly stressful environment that we've all found ourselves in 2020. We think it's important, and we're honored that you've chosen to spend some time with us today. The reason for getting together this afternoon is to address the financial challenges and opportunities that are specific to women. At SRP, we simply couldn't let 2020 come to a close without recognizing those unique challenges and creating a forum for education and inspiration to help women move more confidently toward their financial goals. Now, I am delighted to introduce my esteemed colleagues. Shannon Maloney is a founder of SRP and a managing director of our Michigan office. She was recently named to NAPA's Top Women Advisor list for 2020. She is an Army veteran, an ESOP ninja, and a wife and mom extraordinaire. Next, Lisa Petronio is the managing director of our upstate New York office. Lisa was also just named to NAPA's Top Women Advisor list for 2020. She is a ferocious reader, an enthusiastic community volunteer, and a fervent retirement plan educator. And last but not least, my colleague Jacqueline Hendricks is the Director of New Business Development for SRP, coming to us from her home office in San Diego, California today. She is a networking sage, a hole-in-one card holder, and absolutely passionate about women and finance. So I'm going to ask Shannon to get us started today. Shannon, take it away.
So we're going to talk about the truths that we face as women. We're going to talk about our money behaviors, how emotion can sabotage our financial future. We're going to talk about goals. We're going to talk about how to manage your money and the mechanics, how to choose investments that are right for you, and how to embrace yourself as an investor. Then we're going to talk about the joy of spending. Yes, spending should be a joy to help you create the life you want. You are in charge of your money and how you relate to it. But relating to it is difficult, especially with some of the realities and specific circumstances facing women today. We're going to talk about 3 of these truths right now. Sarah? So the first, there continues in 2020 to be a wage gap with women earning 80 cents to every dollar earned by their male counterparts. Couple with this with the fact that we live longer, on average 5 years longer than our significant others who are males. We will be managing our finances someday. Why not embrace it now? 38% of women are the primary breadwinners in their families. However, compared to their male counterparts, we only have half of the retirement balance in our retirement accounts. Many attribute this to the fact that women are risk averse or conservative investors. I disagree with this strongly. I believe that women are debt adverse, and we would rather pay down our debt then invest. However, this puts us even farther behind than the first two things we mentioned. So we must figure out how to do it simultaneously. And last, women are the CFOs of the household. We make most of the household financial decisions, yet we may characterize ourselves as not financially savvy. I challenge you about this. My mom could make a dime out of a nickel. We were eating tofu and ramen way before we went to college. And that's because that's how she created our college savings accounts. So we're going to talk now about money behaviors. No one is entirely rational when it comes to money. Our relationship with money is complex and it has evolved over our lifetime. The key here is that it evolves and changes. What made us confident and comfortable about money in our 20s is probably not what makes us comfortable and confident in our 50s. So the key to success here is we get to determine what success looks like. If you don't feel like you're in charge of your financial future, is it because of the environmental factors we just mentioned? Is it because you're overwhelmed with COVID? Or could it be that some of your money behaviors and emotions are sabotaging your financial decisions? So let's talk about our money behaviors. Sometimes we throw our hands in the air versus doing what we know is in our own best interest. We create, but don't follow a budget, or we don't even create one. We put talking to our significant other about money off because it's uncomfortable, or we're at opposite ends of the spectrum. We put off saving for a rainy day or contributing to our retirement plan off because it's difficult. We spend too much out of recklessness or exuberance, and then we feel guilty. Or we don't spend anything out of insecurity. Whether we acknowledge it or not making a decision about money is making a decision. But the good news is that you can change it and take charge now by taking small steps. A journey of 1,000 steps begins with just one, and these small steps add up over time and make big successes. So let's talk about some of the steps that we can take. First of all, start with an emergency savings account. Put $1,000 as your goal. Once you achieve that, make it 1 month of salary. Your next, start contributing or annually increase your contribution to your retirement plan. You will feel better and like you're in charge. Save for a big purchase and pay for it in cash. This is a great example for you and for your children. Nothing feels better than going to buy that sofa and bringing out a wad of cash. You will feel very satisfied. I guarantee it. The next thing is plan for some of those larger goals. Write it down, whether or not it is putting money away for college, saving for retirement, saving for a vacation, or starting your own business. Start to think about what those large goals are and make a plan. Write down your goals. That's one of the biggest keys to success here with regard to aligning your goals and values. Write your goal down, share it with someone, and then hold yourself accountable. The next thing that has an influence on our behavior is our emotions. The decisions that we make about money and our financial situation affect how we feel about money and our future financial situation. So let's talk about them. The first emotions are the big three: guilt, shame, and especially envy. These negative emotions do not motivate us to take those small steps to success. In fact, they love to be in charge and they want to stay in charge. The good news is they're feelings and they can be changed. The next is avoidance and anxiety, which creates a circle of conflict. But you can break this. Writing these goals down and taking these small steps will start to change this. The last part of all is our emotional baggage. So it is difficult to walk away from our past. We grew up in a family and our family had a past and we all felt differently about money. So was your family, did you have enough money or too little money? Were you generous or was it stingy? Did you take vacations or not take vacations? How did everyone feel about money? Did it make them happy or sad or worried? All of these emotions create baggage that we bring with us into the future. Isn't it time to set that baggage down or leave it behind? You can do this. You can have that success. Decide to make those changes, put that baggage down. How does that baggage make you feel? Do you feel insecure? Do you feel unsafe? Is it creating the desired financial future that you'd like? Or do you want to figure out how to feel confident and successful? You need to put that baggage down and move forward. But before we can put our money to work, we need to think about what we want to do with our money. Money is scary. Money is a necessity. Unlike air or water, it is neither free nor unlimited. But we forget that our money is a tool. It is a means to an end. And as such, we must understand what our goals are to begin to take charge of our financial life and wield that tool appropriately. And if we want to be successful, again, write them down, share them with someone, and hold ourselves accountable. Create short-term goals, holiday spending, saving for a car, saving for that emergency account. Long-term goals, that college education, retirement, starting a new business. The difficult part of this is understanding which money behaviors you can keep and which money behaviors you need to change in order to achieve your goals and take charge of your financial future. Sarah? Our definition of wealth is for money to create options, and our options are as varied as we are. Decide what you want to do. Do you want to sleep in, go fishing, continue working? Decide how you spend your time, with family, with friends, by yourself. Decide where you want to spend your time, close to family, farther from family, traveling, in a warm climate, a cold climate. Decide how you spend money. Are you good with a budget? Are you comfortable with a budget? Do you need a tight budget or a looser budget? Do you want to get money all the way to be a means to an end? Or are you looking for it to do something else so that you can share it with others? Do you want to contribute to charities? Do you want to use it to create a new hobby? And some of these hobbies are expensive, like skiing or boating. I know those are all goals that we all have for ourselves. So money can do anything once you put it to work, but you need to have it work as hard as you do. And in order to do this, my colleague Lisa is going to show you how to manage your money.
Thanks, Shannon. As we shift the focus to you, what words would you use to describe yourself? Would you use the word investor? Despite the fact that we have 401ks, 403bs, IRAs, 529s, and other investments in our own name, the answer is that almost no one considers themselves an investor. That's the problem. So in this next section, we step up to the investing plate. There are two ways you can make the money you need to live. You can earn money by working and saving, or you can earn money by putting your savings to work. This is investing. Investing is the way to stay ahead. Set aside money for the long term, say 5 years or more. Use it to buy a mix of stocks and bonds that make sense for your age and your risk tolerance. It sounds easy, right? But we know there are many common barriers to investing. Here's how to knock them down. First, start by doing it. The way to understand it is sometimes to just do it. You may find that you know more than you thought you did. Women and men have been given multiple choice tests to quiz on their financial knowledge. The scores are actually pretty equal once you remove that don't know option, which women tend to choose far more often than men. Second, you don't need to lose money if you have enough time. No one has to lose, and history bears that out. If you're invested in the S&P 500, even over the worst 30-year period of time in history, you still would have made about 8% per year. Third, it's not the same as gambling, and here's why. When you're gambling, you're wagering all your money on one particular outcome. If that outcome doesn't pan out, you lose it all. But when you're investing in a fund, on the other hand, you're buying small pieces of many companies. Over time, that value can go up or down, but you're not buying just one stock. So you're spreading your risk out over many companies. And because you're doing that, you're vastly increasing your chances of making money, not losing it. That's what we call diversification. Many people get hung up on choosing individual stocks or mutual funds when they invest. But the truth is, that's not the most important decision to worry about. The important factors are how much you save and your investment mix. Putting aside a solid 15% of whatever it is you're earning year in and year out should get you to the point where you can retire with confidence. As for your investments, there's so much research on the importance of asset allocation, that is deciding how much to invest in stocks versus bonds, and how it compares to the importance of security selection, which would be picking that specific stock or specific bond. Honestly, all that research will just make your head spin, so here's what you need to know. In 1986, 3 researchers did a deep dive into the performance of pension plans, and they determined that asset allocation was actually responsible for 84% of the performance. In other words, it wasn't about the individual investments, it was about the mix. In the paper they published, it's still cited today. There have been lots of follow-up studies, and in every case, it's that mix of investments that accounts for the lion's share of success. It may help to think of accounts as buckets that hold your investments. And there's 4 basic types of buckets that are on this slide. Then think there's 3 different kinds of contents you can put into those buckets. So the first kind of money you can put into a bucket is taxable, like bank and brokerage accounts. You pay taxes on your earnings each year. The next kind of money you can put into the account is tax deferred. The government wants you to save for retirement, so you get a tax deduction for making a contribution. And you don't pay taxes on the money while it's in the account. When you withdraw it at retirement, you pay income taxes based on whatever your tax rate is at that time. So this includes 401ks, 403bs, other workplace retirement plans, and traditional IRAs. The third kind of money you can put into the bucket is tax-free. Roth accounts like Roth IRAs, Roth 401k, or 403b fall into this category, along with health savings accounts. Roths are funded with after-tax dollars, while HSAs are before you pay taxes. In general, we want to put as much of our money into tax-deferred or tax-free buckets before we move on to other types of buckets like taxable. We also want to make sure that we're grabbing any other incentives or freebies like matching dollars, making sure that you're taking advantage of everything that's available. Now grab a pen because we're getting to the good stuff. Sarah, first things first, make sure your emergency savings is in place. Boy, 2020 was a real gut check there. So once you have that and your health savings account in order, you'd want to contribute to accounts in this order: 401k or other workplace plan up to the employer match. Then fill up your HSA to the annual limit, and you can flip back to your 401k up to that annual limit. If you're still going, consider 529 college savings plans, Roth IRAs, and then taxable accounts. You want to look at taxes and flexibility. If you think your tax bracket is higher now than it will be in retirement, a traditional IRA makes sense. If you think your tax rate will be higher later, which is generally true for younger people, or that all US tax rates will be higher later, a Roth makes sense. Many people, including myself, have money invested in both Roth and traditional. So we're hedging our bets on the uncertainty of both our own and the country's future tax rates. A Roth IRA is also more flexible in that you can withdraw your contributions, although not your earnings, at any time without penalty. So you can get the money out if you need it. There is also no mandatory withdrawal age. You can let it grow forever and then pass it on to your kids if you'd like. Once you've decided which buckets to fill, you can decide on the type of investments you want. Here are the ways to go about that in order of effort that they require, from practically no effort to more substantial. A target date fund is a preset investment based on your current age. As you get closer to retirement, it automatically becomes more conservative. The managed account in the middle allows you to customize your portfolio based on your age, your risk tolerance, and other factors. Then the portfolio is managed for you to become more conservative over time. And then in the do-it-yourself model, you choose from a number of different options to truly customize your own portfolio, and you manage the changes over time. More information about each of these investment options can be found on your retirement plan website, through your plan's 800 number, or by connecting with your local SRP advisor. Many studies show that women are better investors than men. The primary reason for this is that women do not meddle. And when women don't meddle, their investments grow faster because they earn earnings on the earnings. And over the years, that multiplies. So I'm now going to turn it over to Jackie to share the joy of spending.
Thanks, Lisa. So now this is the good stuff. In this segment, we're going to cover the joy of spending. And spending money can be a contentious issue. And that might be because when we take a closer look at ourselves and our spending behavior, it makes us feel a little bit guilty. A survey of mothers from 2017 by babycenter.com found that 57% of mothers feel guilty about spending money on themselves. And we all know that guilt doesn't get us anywhere. So the purpose of this segment is to open you up to the fact that spending can be an absolute joy. So as Shannon shared earlier, women are the CFOs of the home and already do a majority of the spending. So my question for you is, how do you wrap your arms around spending, and how are you going to let go of the judging and the remorse? So the narrative that money can't buy happiness isn't exactly true. If you're struggling to make ends meet, more money can absolutely buy you happiness. But on the flip side, if you're already living comfortably, research says that more money doesn't give you much of a happiness boost. A well-known 2010 Princeton study found that people tend to feel more happy the more they make, but only up until a certain point, which researchers estimated to be about $75,000 per year per person. People's emotional well-being, or how they felt on a daily basis, didn't improve as they made more than $75,000, but their life satisfaction did. It's also important to note that once you achieve these basic comforts of a roof over your head and paying for your bills, the more money may provide a short-term happiness boost, but it doesn't generally provide a long-term one. It's not about the money that you make, but it's about what you do with it. If you're waiting around for a bigger paycheck or more money, it's not going to make you any happier. So when we buy something that doesn't line up with our vision of how we should be spending, we experience cognitive dissonance. We disappoint ourselves, and this leads to regret. Our spending joy quickly disintegrates into spending pain, and then it becomes overspending, which can be an issue for even of the richest of people. Choosing the smaller house or the older car in order to keep some extra money in your savings account may make you happier in the long term than spending it on impulse purchases. The question we need to start asking ourselves is not whether we can swing that purchase in the context of today's budget, but also what having spent the money on means for the choices that we have for tomorrow. If we overspend by a few $1,000s a year, does that limit our opportunities that we have for travel or giving back or to make a job change? The answer to that question is to use the money to bring you joy. So first, spend on experiences and not things. We all know that material items lose their luster over time. It's not just fashion that fades, but it's technology, toys, accessories, and even new kitchen countertops. Spending money on experiences, however, tends to have a longer lasting and more substantial payoff. Why is that? Experiences tend to get better with time. Many of you might think that experiences are limited to, say, vacations or concerts, but I'm here to present you with a different viewpoint. Earlier this year, I paid off my student loans 3 years early. And let me tell you, that brings me joy when I think about it. But it especially brings me joy when I think about myself at 23 years old, living in downtown Chicago, and choosing at times to not buy the it new purse or handbag, or being okay with my 2005 Toyota Camry that I've had since high school. And I still have it today, 15 years later. I chose at that time to put all my money, which wasn't a lot, it was maybe $50 here or there, towards my loans. But I'm here to tell you it was so worth it. So number 2, time on the clock. Another proven way to spend more money to bring you joy is to buy you time. Since time's a limited resource, we can use that money to get other people to take tasks off of you that you don't find joyful. In other words, you can hire them out. In a 2017 study, We found that when people paid for more time-saving services, and that can be as simple as ordering dinner off of Uber Eats or having your home cleaned, they had higher levels of life satisfaction than when they bought that material item. Yes, I'm giving you permission to get a house cleaner. You should definitely do it. And last but not least, spend on others. There's one way that spending has been proven to bring us joy. I can remember back to the first year that I had my quote unquote big girl job. That year's holiday season is still the best and most memorable for me. And it wasn't because I got an awesome present or anything like that. It was because it was the first year that I was able to spend money on my family for Christmas. It brought back all the feels of my younger self and waiting for Santa to come. But this time I was Santa. I had the dollars. So spending on others, especially the ones that you love, can bring immense joy in your life. So here we are at the end of this section. We've learned from Shannon the unique challenges and opportunities that women have when it comes to finances. And we heard from Lisa about the mechanics of managing your money. And I discussed how spending can bring us joy. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah to open this up for a little Q&A conversation. Sarah?
Thanks, Jackie, and thank you, Lisa and Shannon, as well, for your wise remarks and some great reflection and tips and pointers today. As Jackie mentioned, we are going to open it up for questions, and we do welcome your questions in the chat feature if you still have some that might have come to mind during our time together today. But first, I am going to address one that came through related to health savings accounts. And it was a very wise question asked by Christine. She says, HSA savings are tax-free, but if I recall correctly, that money can only be spent on specific health-related items. Can you explain the advantages or disadvantages in why or how investing the max amount yearly in an HSA could be beneficial both now and in the long run? And I think I'm going to ask Lisa if she would kindly address that question for us.
Thanks, Sarah. That is a really great question. First, I want to say that you can only invest in a health savings account if you're on a high deductible health plan. So you got to check with your employer or whatever health insurance you're taking to make sure you're on that high deductible plan. And as long as you are, then you can start saving in an HSA. Fidelity did a study. They do a study every couple of years on how much a married couple at age 65 is going to spend on healthcare in retirement. And the latest study has that number at about $280,000. So if we know that we need to spend $280,000 in retirement, and I think I have two different buckets. If I have maybe a taxable, tax-deferred account, like my 401k or 403b, and then I have my health savings account, if you need to take that money, that $280,000 out of your 401k, you're going to have to actually gross that dollar amount up because it's not limited to just medical expenses. So, in order to get that $280,000, you might actually have to withdraw $350,000 so you can actually spend $280,000. Whereas under the HSA, qualified medical expenses, you can withdraw tax-free. So you really get that triple tax advantage on the HSA. I think the other block sometimes when we think about HSAs is many people view their HSA as like an on-demand checking account. Like I put the money in and then I spend it on my medical expenses. You can actually invest the money inside your HSA. So my recommendation is have 2 times your annual deductible in that checking account portion. And then anything above that, you want to invest in the market. And really you can think about it as another pool of money to be used for retirement healthcare expenses, premiums, co-pays, prescriptions, et cetera. Anybody else want to add to that?
I have a fun spending tidbit here. If anybody is a member of Amazon Prime, if you type in HSAs or FSAs into the little search bar, it'll show you all the purchases that you can make on Amazon that are HSA qualified. So that's a really neat little tip.
Oh, very good, Jackie.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Jackie. Okay, we have another question coming in from a fellow Sarah. She says she has a question about federal student loans. So that might have been sparked from something you mentioned, Jackie, with your awesome loan payoff story. Sarah says, do you suggest putting money towards paying federal student loans right now when that interest rate environment is so low, sub 5%? And there's a moratorium on payments, which at this moment is until December, she thinks, but she says, who knows? Or would you recommend taking a potential surplus, and she says putting it into savings? I think she might mean investing it. Shannon, I'm going to see if potentially you and or Jackie would want to weigh in on this one.
Shannon, maybe I'll cover the first part and then I'll flip it over to you for the advisor perspective. So one of the things that I did that this year that I was able to pay off my loans a little bit early was because of that 0% interest on the federal loan. So I threw all of my extra cash towards that. I got one of the checks from the government too. So I threw that $1,250 to that and was able to pay that down quicker. But I'll let the advisors give the official answer on what you should do there.
So I think there's a couple of different answers for this. And number one, it's comfort level. So with regard to your loans, there's a lot of people who like to arbitrage. Should I be putting my money into the market where I can possibly make more, or should I pay down my debt? And it really depends upon, number one, how large is your debt? And number two, what is your comfort level with regard to the market? So we think that you should be able to look at doing both and see which one is going to give you the most joy, like Jackie said. Remember, even though you're not paying interest on your student loans right now, that interest is still going to compound. So what happens with that is compounding is wonderful when it's applied to your investment portfolio because you end up with more over time. It's terrible when it's applied to your debt portfolio, which means that it is also growing over time. So I think that Jackie's strategy of taking a look at where your money is, if you do have some extra, to start throwing that towards that, as well as contributing to your 401k plan, you will end up at a better point in the long run by doing both. I don't recommend stopping paying off debt because I think once we get in the habit of that, it's very difficult to start it again.
Mm-hmm. Great, Shannon. That's excellent. There's a question here that I personally would love to take if you guys are okay with that. In my travels and having thousands and thousands, it seems like, participant education meetings over the years with individuals, I have a heart for Carol's question, which is, I'm in my later 60s and still work part-time. Awesome, Carol. Any specific suggestion for us older gals when it comes to feeling in charge of finances? So Carol, first and foremost, I would say coming to a session and seeking out educational opportunities like this is a great first step because you are being proactive in trying to have a better understanding of finance. And one thing that I would suggest is that you really dig in deep to what you have. Something that's really important when you're in those pre-retiree years is to really get a handle on what you've collected, what you've saved, what types of accounts you have collected really over the years. And when you have a better understanding of what you have in place, how it's taxed, how much you have, what types of accounts you have, you're really better positioned to put together an airtight plan for the future, or as airtight as it can be, really. So having confidence in that knowledge is really, really important. The other thing that I would tell you or just encourage you is that some people feel like as they're coming to the end of their career that their time horizon for investing is really, really short. The reality is your time horizon for retirement is really, really short because that date might be approaching. But your time horizon for investment is still, or can be, still relatively long because many of us will live for 20 or 30 years in retirement. So it's still now important more than ever to continue saving, to continue to keep your finger on the pulse of what you've collected over the years and still trying to plan for the future. It's never too late to both understand and try to make really good decisions for your future. So another question that came in is, what are the tax benefits on a 529 account? I can only imagine that there are many of us moms on the call that want to know how to not only save for our financial future and our retirement, but maybe also help our kids with college along the way. So Lisa, would you be willing to take that one?
I am. I feel like I am taking all of the tax. You guys must really have me pegged for the tax queen. So the 529, kind of similar to what I was saying about HSA accounts, 529s are specific for education. There was some legislation at the end of 2019 that's really expanded the use of 529. So a lot of people think of it as college, but you can also use it for vocational or private K through 12 now. So it's an educational savings program. There is federal tax benefits that you can make contributions to the 529 plan, not pay. You get a federal tax deduction on that. And then that would grow tax deferred, similar to your retirement account, when you take it out, as long as you use it for educational purposes, which includes things like not only tuition, but room and board, books, etc. Then you can use it tax-free. There are also some state programs. So depending on which 529 provider that you use, each state has a different program. So there may also be additional state tax benefits that apply to the 529. So it's really a tax savings vehicle. If you end up using the money for something other than retirement, or I'm sorry, other than educational expenses, it would be taxable at a normal tax rate. And last point, if you have multiple children or grandchildren or just loved ones that you're saving for, you can transfer money from one account to the other. So for example, I have 3 kids. So, let's load up the first one. And if we need to transfer to the second and third, the third one, which is a boy, maybe he'll get lucky then if his sisters don't spend it all.
Sounds good, Lisa. All right, another question that came in anonymously. I think I would love for Shannon to answer this one for us. The question is, do you have advice for how to balance emotions when it comes to emotional spending that's helpful for loved ones? And I would love to have more information on what exactly that means. But she says, unfortunately, it sometimes turns into a situation where the woman ends up hurting financially, but emotions don't just go away. So this is really hard to balance. Shannon, do you have any words of wisdom there?
I do. And I think that this is more common than most people realize, is that you and your significant other or other family members can be at opposite ends of the spectrum. The terrible word of spendthrift versus saver, you don't necessarily have to characterize yourself or them that way. But just like we have been told for years to have a gratitude journal, sometimes it's really important to have a financial journal and actually write down how you're feeling when it comes to some of these discussions before you do it, before a purchase, before a discussion, before you talk about refinancing your house, before you talk about investing. Are you working with an advisor that's only talking to your significant other? All these kinds of things stir up emotions. And what happens is that we tend to shut down because we are labeled as emotional. Well, emotions are just as much a part of investing for our male counterparts as they are for us. They sometimes can get caught up in the emotional maelstrom just like we can. But you have to sit down and recognize what emotion you're feeling. And remember, it's a feeling. It will pass. And you need to figure out, what feeling do you want? And then what are some small steps to take to get there? So let's say that it's you and your significant other that are on opposite ends of the spectrum between saving and spending. One of the first ways to kind of make a compromise is to create an account that is the person who likes to spend more than the saver is their own account. They can spend it however they want during that month or the quarter, whatever the time frame is, without judgment, remorse, or guilt. But you can't spend over it. The other thing is to make a determination of what dollar amount between the two of you or your family can you not go over before you have to have consensus. Is that $500? Is it $100? Is it $1,000? If my husband came home with a brand new car, I would probably have a heart attack. But if he goes out and buys a new golf club, I'm probably fine with that. So it's kind of understanding what the give and take is and realizing emotions are not going to go away, but remember that they are feelings and they change. So what used to be enough when we were 20 may not be enough when we're 40 or when we're 60. And that's okay, but recognize it and make a plan, because once you have a plan of action, you will feel better, they will feel better, but you have to have some consensus, which means you have to have difficult conversations about money. And money is a tool. It is not something to control you with or to control other people with. It is that means to an end. And once you start living your life as if what you have is enough, you'll see that your emotions about money start to change. And that can be even if you're living paycheck to paycheck. So we recommend starting a small account for the spender so that they can have it. Start writing down your emotions when it comes to financial decisions, and then have those conversations where you can come to consensus about the limit that you spend before you have a discussion, as well as starting to believe that the other person, start projecting positive emotions on that other person. And maybe they'll start projecting some positive emotions for yourself.
Perfect. Thanks, Shannon. And we are going to try to wrap in just the next few minutes, but the questions are coming in like rapid fire. You guys are an awesome group, and hopefully we can take this as positive feedback that there are women out there with questions and that the conversation really needs to continue. But I want to hit this one real quick from Marissa. She says, what advice would you give to working moms on how to prioritize college savings versus individual savings and investing? I'll hit that one real quickly. I'm pretty passionate about it. I think we need to flip those two things around and prioritize individual savings and investing, particularly for your own retirement. Once you satisfy your retirement goals and determine, sometimes with the help of an advisor or professional, that you are indeed on track toward a good retirement outcome, then take that any surplus that you have and channel that towards other investments, whether it's for yourself, for your kids, for your family, other goals. You've heard us say it time and again, there are no loans that you can take for retirement. There are no grants out there usually that you can get for that time in your life. So you really want to make sure that's secure. That's harder for women than men. We are the emotional ones in the relationship usually. These are our babies and we want to save for them and provide for them, but we're not doing them any good if we're not taking care of ourselves first. And that's not just in finance either. There's another question on here that I just can't skip over because it's so close to my heart, and every woman on this call can relate. Morgan says, I'm a new graduate, first big girl job, first time in my young adult life where I'm not living to paycheck. Where do I start? How much should I be putting into my 401k or my emergency fund? Or how much should I be placing toward my student loans? Lisa, do you want to take a crack at that quickly?
Yes. So I had a nice little kind of chart that kind of shows where I think you want to start. And really the base is emergency savings. You want to make sure that you're building up your emergency savings. Ultimately, your end goal is to have 3 to 6 months worth of expenses, not income. So how much you're spending, kind of your mandatory, if all things else, I know I still need to pay for my rent, my heat, my XYZ. You ultimately want to get there. You might need to kind of break that up into some chunks. So like Shannon said, you know, if it's starting with $1,000 and then 1 month and then 2 months, 3 months, you want to start with that emergency savings. If you're on a high deductible plan, I also recommend getting to that point where you have 2 years worth of annual deductible. As someone who maxed out her deductible 2 years in a row, thank you to my children. I think it's really good to have that money set aside in case you're on a high deductible plan. Then, and kind of simultaneously, you might have to take some of these goals at the same time. You certainly want to be contributing enough to a retirement plan that you're maximizing the employer contribution. And that could also be match dollars from HSA. And then from there, you can kind of, it's like building. So, you know, once you kind of check off those lower boxes, you can start to build up a little higher. And there might be some time that you need to spend on fulfilling simultaneous goals. So, you know, like Shannon talked and Jackie talked about earlier about paying student loans and saving at the same time. I think it's in many cases an and, not an or.
Mhm.
And just to add just a little bit more of that, it means you have to sit down and actually write down all of your expenses and all of your income and see where you have some flexibility and make those into buckets. You know, the bucket strategy is a really important bucket. It's a really important strategy. It helps you save for vacation. It helps you pay off your student loan. It helps you have your emergency savings account. It helps you contribute to your 401k. So take a couple minutes, write it all down, figure out what you can do, put the most to emergency savings, put the next to health savings if you have it. If not, then put some to retirement. And at the same time, you're making at least your minimum payment to your student loan. But then if you get any extra money because you got a windfall from grandma and you got a big birthday check, put that towards your student loan. So those are some of the things just think about. And unfortunately, it does involve math. And ladies, math is not bad. Math is good. Math is what's going to help us get to that comfortable retirement so we don't have that frightening catastrophe of running out of time before we running out of money before we run out of time.
Perfect. So I want to go ahead and wrap things up in our session today, first and foremost, by thanking all of you for joining us today for such thoughtful and engaging questions. If there are still questions that went unanswered, please engage with us at SRP. Our participant education email address is plantoday@srpretired.com. And I would encourage you to reach out to us there, and we'll get you in touch with your local advisor to really chase down some more knowledge, education, or guidance if that's what you're looking for. Again, wanted to highlight that there are resources, not only the Fierce Finance resources available at the link that you see on your screen right now, but there's also a budgeting worksheet there. Based on what Shannon just mentioned, I think everyone might want to check out our 50-30-20 budgeting worksheet, which it's not fun at times, but a lot of good financial decisions can come from a sound, thoughtful budget. So that's a great place to start. Once again, we appreciate your time and consideration in joining us today. We wish you and your families well in the holiday season that is upon us here. And we certainly look forward to connecting with you again as we transition into 2021, which will hopefully be a bright year for all of us. So stay safe, and thanks again for joining us. Bye-bye.